Hello everyone, Scott here, and welcome to this edition of the Pillow Talk podcast. In today's edition, I want to be speaking about the consultation from the government for the new deal for renting, a consultation paper that's just been launched and has gone through the process. And basically it is to repeal section 21 of the 1988 Housing Act, which basically gets rid of the no-fault clause for evictions, meaning you can't just evict your tenant and take the property back for no reason like you can just now. You can't raise the section 21 notice. Now, in Scotland, they have done this already. The consultation period's been and gone. It is implemented. It is now law. Before, we had the equivalent of an AST. We had a minimum 6-month period, and they have changed that to a PRT, private residential tenancy. Now, you sign a tenancy agreement, or the tenant signs it, and it's open-ended. There is no end date for this. So essentially, a tenant is in for life. Adapted and changed some of the eviction clauses, or some mandatory ones, and there are some discretionary ones. But basically, you can't just take your tenant back, your property back because you want to. You need to have a legal reason to do it. So that's one change. The minimum term, the tenant can give notice after the first day. So that's what's happening in Scotland. That's not necessarily what's going to be happening here, but we've been through the consultation process, and you tend to find things happen in Scotland then filter down into England a few years later, or vice versa. So if you want any more information on what might happen, certainly look at the PRT, private residential tenancy. That's a new version of what you guys call an AST. So that's Scotland. Let's talk about England and Wales and this new consultation. It's quite funny because the actual web address on the government website goes on to, and it's called A New Deal for Renting, Resetting the Balances of Rights and Responsibilities Between Landlords and Tenants. So it starts off, even the domain name of the page on the website has Resetting the Balance of Rights as a name. So it tells you what they're trying to do. Question, they're resetting the rights between tenants and landlords. Who do you think is going to come out of this with the most rights, or the more rights than they currently have? Yeah, it's going to be tenants. So the name of the report is Resetting the Balance of Rights. So it tells you there it's not going to be resetting the balance of rights for owners and landlords. It's going to be detrimental, and it's definitely going to be resetting the rights for tenants. This has happened in Scotland. It's not necessarily been a massively bad thing. They do have more rights, but perhaps as a society, it's maybe our duty to protect those. I say that as a landlord and a letting agent. Probably have about 600 properties we manage, and this has been a mad, crazy process to get all of them changed over, all new tenancy agreements. Lots of things happening, new systems to learn. We had the Housing Act 1988, all that legislation hadn't been updated until last year, and now it's all totally new. So we had new things to learn. So this is a big consultation paper. I'll put the link in the channel here. I'm going to quickly run through some of the things that are in this paper. This is the consultation that's going to go before it goes to into legislation. So basically they're wanting to repeal section 21 of the Housing Act 1988, and that ends no-fault evictions, meaning that your tenant is in and you can only evict him on a narrower set of circumstances. As I say, this has happened in Scotland, so have a look into what's happened here because it might follow pretty similarly. They also want to strengthen, the good thing is they want to strengthen Section 8 of the Housing Act, which means you can sell and move on a little bit easier. So although tenants are getting a lot more rights and longer, stronger tenancies, they're strengthening some of the eviction clauses for landlords, which is quite good. So there's not going to be, based on this, there's probably not going to be any more AST. AST is an assured short hold tenancy. It's either just going to be an assured tenancy or a fixed term tenancy. Now that is different from Scotland because a tenant just signs an agreement. There's no date on it. It goes on forever until one of the parties does something. So what they're saying in this consultation is open-ended, very much like the PRT in Scotland, or I think they're going to be more reasonable here, and you can sign it for a fixed term. So you're basically saying it's 2 years or whatever. So that is very good news if that does happen. There's 3 new grounds for eviction. One, as I said, they're strengthening the existing ground 13, and I don't know about the English letting system, but they are strengthening it to get out tenants that don't maintain safety standards. So that's quite a good thing, because in Scotland, and I'm sure you guys, it's hard. If that tenant isn't letting you in or giving you access, In Scotland now, we don't go to the courts. There's a thing called the first tier tribunal. So evictions, rent arrears, antisocial behaviour, all these things go through a tribunal system in Scotland. So no mention of that happening in England. It will still go through the courts perhaps. But if they're strengthening the clause for you guys to get your tenants out for not being able to maintain safety standards, that's a nice one. The other one is for you guys to move back in, so you should be easier because it's a brand new eviction ground for specifically set up to move back into the property. And finally is to sell your property, so you can get it back to sell it. So this is this paper, a new deal for renting, resetting the balance of rights and responsibilities between landlords and tenants. If you put, private rented sector consultation into Google, this will come up. So this is the frequently asked questions. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. I've tried to cover not in any detail because it's a consultation and it will change. This I saw happening in England and Wales. It's going to affect our serviced accommodation units. If it's massively detrimental to landlords, more landlords are going to leave the sector. That creates problems and opportunities. It affects other sectors, so it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. Even if you're not a buy-to-let landlord, this will definitely affect serviced accommodation landlords for various reasons. So yeah, definitely worth looking at. Download the report and have a read if it at all concerns you.